Welcome to Food in a Flash. I'm Sharon Glass, and today we're making one of my favorite meals. It's brunch, and we're going to have it with family and friends. So we're making an asparagus phyllo tart, a baked brie that's delicious and easy, some cinnamon buns essential for brunch, and we're finishing off with a spaghetti frittata, quite different and so easy. As a self-taught cook and cooking teacher of 27 years, I have a passion for what I do, and as a mother, I know how rewarding it is to see my family happily tucking into a wonderful meal that I have prepared. I also know what it's like to be a busy mom and still have to think about getting dinner on the table. It's not always easy, but it doesn't have to be complicated. That's why I started teaching and writing cookbooks, to show people just how wonderful it can be to cook and enjoy and still have time and energy to do the important things in life. I hope I can get you to become confident in the kitchen, have fun, and above all, create some beautiful, simple meals that you and your family will absolutely love. So let's start with our dough for our cinnamon buns. This is unusual because we're actually going to make it in a food processor. It's simple and easy, and we just need to let it rise. So I've got some flour, and I don't use bread flour, I just use a normal cake flour, and pop all the dry ingredients straight into the bowl. So I've got some sugar and a little bit of instant yeast, a pinch of salt. Okay, we're going to just process that to get it all mixed nicely. It's important that the yeast and everything mixes really, really well together. Perfect. Now I've got some warm milk. This is stunning in a cinnamon bun because it really makes them light and fluffy. I have some melted butter, some milk, and I'm going to add an egg yolk. Now if you wanted to make them non-dairy, a very good option, you could use margarine, exactly the same quantity, and you could use a soya milk, for example, and that would work very well as well. And some people don't like using eggs or egg yolks, so you could use a bit of flaxseed oil because that works well too. So we just want to pulse this to form a dough, not overwork it, till it just comes together. So what it's doing is actually working the gluten, and if you see the consistency, we need it to be quite smooth, so I'm going to let it go just a little bit, clear some space, and we can work with it now on the counter. Right, that's perfect. Pop it onto my counter. I need to add a little bit of flour. So I'm just going to work it a little bit, just flour a little bit onto the counter, and actually just get that dough into a really nice smooth consistency. So it's a pull-push kind of working. So you pull with the heel, push with the heel and pull back and turn it. And that just elastifies the dough and gets it really rising beautifully. As soon as it's nice and smooth, and you can actually see that it's changed the consistency of the dough itself, it really is beautiful, then we put it into an oiled bowl, very important, and just run it around so that the oil coats the whole dough, that when it rises it doesn't stick to the bowl. And then we want to just cover it with a little bit of Glad wrap so that it seals, or you could even put a little cover of a dishcloth or something over it. It just wants to keep the air inside. Now we don't want to put it in the sun. When we put it in the sun, it actually over-rises it. So just in a warm place for about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and it should double in size. So as soon as it's risen, we can roll it out and bake it. Delicious. So while that's rising, let's make a very quick brie. This is delicious. I love a runny cheese that's baked. And it's so simple this. You want a whole little brie, put it into some foil, and if it comes in foil, just fold back the foil that it's already in. I like to put it in a dish that can go into the oven so that it's easy to get out. You get big ones or smaller ones, this works perfectly. And all we're going to do, I've got a beautiful clove of fresh garlic here. So we want to just slice this garlic into little thin slivers, make incisions, put a little piece of garlic, inside here, and a little sprig of rosemary. And it looks gorgeous when they're sticking out. Drizzle it with a drop of olive oil, and it'll probably take about 10-15 minutes to bake. That's about it. And I like to just sprinkle a little bit around the edges, just like that. So a bit more garlic here, and another one there. And you want them to peek out because it really looks gorgeous. A drizzle of olive oil. That's the whole recipe. And my Melba toast I've already made because I like to shave it as thin as possible, and it's actually better with day-old bread or even 2-day-old. And then a low oven, just leave them on a baking tray and let them dry out, and they're ready whenever you need them. This will go in as and when I need it, and it bakes probably about 10 minutes until the cheese just starts oozing and the whole thing puffs. Let's put it in the oven. Magically with TV, my dough has risen. So what we're going to do is make a paste of butter, brown sugar and cinnamon, and I'm going to spread that onto the dough. So let's get that going. My butter is softened, and I need it not to be melted so that I can actually spread it. Some sticky brown sugar, it's the treacle one, some cinnamon, and we're just going to make a paste of that, quite quick and easy, because this is the sugar and the colouring that I want inside. So that's my paste ready to go. The dough is gorgeous. It's soft and puffy. It's risen beautifully. I need a little bit of flour on my counter. And all I'm going to do is pat it out. I'm not even going to roll it, because sometimes when you work with dough and you flatten it too much with a rolling pin, and especially like a bread dough like this where it's got sugar and milk inside, if you flatten it too much, then it actually just compresses the whole dough, and then that yeast doesn't rise nicely. So all we want to do is just get it that it's wide enough for me to spread some filling on. So here is my spread, very thick, no calories barred here, not for the faint-hearted, not for diabetics either. Okay, all we're going to do now is just roll this, and if you watch what I'm doing, I'm picking it up and actually folding it over, not squashing it that I'm rolling that filling out. So I'm literally lifting this dough and gently just rolling it. Then I want to pat in my sides so that they are all even, so that when I cut it, I'm not going to get a flap on the side that's too short. Now the easiest way to cut is always cut in the middle first. Then you cut on the sides, like that. So now they're all the same size. So if I started here, guaranteed by the time I get there, I'm going to have a smaller piece. This way, they're all exactly the same size. And you basically will have 8 little circles. So we always want to start on the outside, face your cut side in. I'm leaving a little bit of space so that when they puff in the oven, they can really just rise beautifully. And make a circle. And it doesn't matter if there's space, because I know that by the time it's finished, they're all going to work perfectly together. So now what we want to do is we want to brush it with a little bit of melted butter and some egg, because the egg is going to give it beautiful color. So just I've got some beaten egg. I add a little bit of water to the egg always just to loosen it. Just dot it on the top. It gives it nice color. And a little bit of melted butter. Just slightly melted. And then I've got a little bit more cinnamon that I'm just sprinkling right on top for color. You could put some cinnamon sugar even, that would work perfectly. And that is ready to go. So we don't need to re-rise this now. We'll go straight into a 180-degree oven for about 30 to 35 minutes. You'll know when they're ready. So as soon as they smell beautiful and the color is gorgeous, take them out. So I'm going to put it on a baking tray so that it doesn't drip over the oven. Let's put it in now. So we're going to let those do their own thing, and when we come back, we're going to make a spaghetti frittata pizza. It is just to die for. Don't go away. Welcome back to Food in a Flash. We're doing a brunch menu today, and we've already got some cinnamon buns in the oven, and we're baking a brie. And now I want to make a spaghetti pizza. It is so delicious and a great way to use leftover linguine or spaghetti. So what I'm doing is I'm putting a little bit of oil into a pan. This can actually go in the oven. So if you don't have one that goes in the oven, start it in here and then put it into an oven-proof dish, because you do need one that will actually bake the whole thing completely in the oven. So I've got some leftover linguine, and I tossed a drop of olive oil over it just so that it won't stick together. And I'm spreading it out into a thickish layer in my pan. We want it to crisp at the bottom so that it gives us a really nice base. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is beat some eggs and some milk and a little bit of garlic with some salt and pepper and pour it over, which will bind the whole thing to set it. It's so simple, but what's really nice about it is that you could actually make the whole thing ahead of time and use it on a hot tray, or keep it on a hot tray to keep it warm, because often when you're cooking, there's so many things going in the oven that you're going to go, well, where am I going to fit it all? So if you do this, put it on a hot tray, it'll keep warm beautifully. It doesn't need to come piping hot out of the oven. Okay, I've got a little bit of minced garlic. Entirely optional. For those of you that don't like garlic, you could leave it out. We have some pepper and a little bit of coarse salt. And I'm going to put a drop of parmesan in here. I've grated some parmesan, freshly grated. And I just want to check my spaghetti before I actually add it. So it's going to start crisping, but I need to make sure that it's loose. So this is a non-stick pan, which is really important when you are doing this, because you will have a problem if you're not able to get it out. Pour it over gently, and that will then bind it and set. So this needs a good 5, maybe 8 minutes on the stove on a medium-high heat, just for those flavors to actually mix and for the spaghetti to actually just start setting, because I want a crusty base to it. When that's done, we're going to be putting some tomato sauce and more cheese on top and popping it into the oven. Oh, that looks gorgeous. It's brown and crusty. My egg is set. So now what I'm going to do is spread some of this tomato sauce on. And this is just a bottled, chunky pasta sauce that I'm just going to spread to give it a bit of a flavor. So a pesto, if you like. Sun-dried tomato pesto or a basil pesto. There we go. And now we want to sprinkle a little bit of cheese. So this is a great thing to serve for brunch because it's filling, it's savory. I always like mixing sweet and savory for brunch. Some feta. I've just crumbled it. And a little bit more parmesan. I don't think it needs any more salt and pepper because my cheeses are quite salty. So let's slip that one in the oven. I've got one that I've already made. I just want to check that it's loose on the edges, that I can slide it out quite easily. There we go, I think it'll come out beautifully. And you want to be sure that it isn't stuck to the pan. Just gently lift it because it's completely set. It slides out fantastically. Doesn't that look just good enough to eat? Now we'll just shred a little bit of basil, just for that bit of green on top. And I can keep this on a hot tray. That can keep warm while we're busy with the other stuff. When we come back, we're going to finish with an asparagus phyllo tart, and I'm sure those cinnamon buns are going to be baked and yummy. Welcome back to Food in a Flash. We're finishing off our delicious brunch with an asparagus phyllo tart. Our buns are in the oven. We've made a spaghetti frittata pizza, which is delicious, and the brie is also baking. So let's start our asparagus tart. I've got a loose bottom tart tin. It's going to look spectacular in this because it's going to give it a really nice long look. So I'm going to lay it with phyllo and put a filling and then long pieces of asparagus. So let's make the filling, which is some eggs to bind it. And you could really do this without the eggs if you wanted to, because the cheeses will hold together. I've got some ricotta. I like to use ricotta because it's quite dry, but some people like to use cottage cheese. Just drain it, that there's not a lot of water. Got a little bit of crumbled feta, and that's purely optional. Some parmesan. For color, you can see I don't measure. I think that when you don't measure, you add lots and lots of flavor. So for me, it's about just feeling how it goes. Some salt, a little bit of black pepper, and I'm going to add a few chives for color. If you had spring onion, you could use some spring onion. And these we're just going to cut quite simply straight into the mixture. And it's going to give me that little bit of an oniony taste without it being too strong. Let's give it a mix. And we want to make sure that that egg is completely mixed in so that it binds the whole thing together. Right, these are the asparagus. And what I'm going to do with them is peel them. I've got a very fancy asparagus peeler. So we just want to pull off the edge. And this works quite well with asparagus that are quite woody. You know when you get a lot of brown on the asparagus. So I've peeled most of them already. Now, a lot of people are nervous of phyllo. They're not quite sure what to do with it. They think it's this pastry that's really impossible to use, and in actual fact it's one of the easiest pastries to use. The trick is it should be at room temperature. So if you take it out of the fridge, you should take it out a couple of hours ahead of time. If you have frozen it, you should defrost it in the fridge, because otherwise it sticks together and you get a lot of moisture and then you can't separate the sheets. Each sheet needs to be brushed with a little bit of butter. Unsalted melted butter, because you don't get brown spots on it. So if you look at this, it's really quite easy to use. I can even crumple it and not be afraid of it. So pop it on your surface. I've melted a little bit of butter. So I don't want to overload it with too much butter, but I'm going to just give it a good coating, and it's really the edges that I'm worried about. That's perfect. 4 sheets, because I'm going to cut them in half. And generally, you would use about 8 for the base of a tart, because otherwise it's not thick enough, and then your base actually starts to soften and get quite moist from the filling inside. So what we want to do, I'm working quite fast, is actually cover the ones that you're not going to use with a damp cloth, not a wet cloth, just a damp cloth. And basically what you would do is then just put the cloth over like this so that they don't get dry, especially in summer, because the air is so hot that it tends to dry out very quickly. And I want to cut this with a straight knife. It should not be a serrated knife because it's going to tear the phyllo. And I'm cutting it lengthwise because my tin is long. Stack the one on top of the other. And we're literally going to pop it into the tin and just shape it to fit. So if you were doing this in a round tin, if you didn't have one of these tins, what I would suggest is just do your sheets, don't cut them in half, but you would then need to use 8 because you obviously are not going to double them over. So I don't really want to make it too perfect because it gets a beautiful look when it's baked. The only thing is that these little edges that are hanging are quite thin, and then they're going to start burning. Okay, and that's basically the prep for my whole phyllo. Now we spread our filling inside, and you just want to give it a nice thin layer, just like that. Okay, these asparagus are quite long, and as you can see, they're not going to fit in here so well. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut them in half completely, just like that, and we're going to lay them alternate layers. So I'm putting a stick in between, and then just facing the head or the tip the other way, and that just gives you a really, really nice look. So you can see I've chosen asparagus that are not terribly thick. The thick ones really will take much longer. Basically, that's all there is to it. I'm going to give it a little drizzle of olive oil. Okay, a little bit of salt and pepper. And my oven's on about 170. 180 is a bit high, 170 is good. I'd rather put it in a little bit longer than have it in too fast and burn. So we'll just do that until it's beautifully puffed. Let's get it in. I took the cinnamon buns out earlier. They've been cooling. So we just want to finish them off with a bit of icing, some added calories. So I'm going to loosen the tin. I've still got my liner, so they're quite easy to remove, and we'll just slide them onto my dish. And I'm going to make an icing with some more butter. I know, this is not a low-fat thing. A little bit of water, and the water just gives you that drizzle, so be careful how much you actually add, because we want quite a thick icing. That's beautiful. It needs to be a drizzling consistency, and then it will cool and set. Right, that's the perfect consistency. So let's drizzle them over the cinnamons. We'll just pull them apart. And that just gives them a finishing touch. So even though it's quite thick, it'll set, because otherwise they just run down the cinnabuns. We'll call them cinnabuns, Sharon cinnabuns actually. And that's all there is to it. Beautiful. Let's go and check that asparagus tart and see how it's doing. My asparagus tart is perfect. I'm going to pop it onto a plate. Let's leave it for a second and let me show you how gorgeous this brie is. So if we cut it, it's oozing and melted. Oh, and what I love to do is just dig a piece of Melba toast inside. Perfect. Gorgeously creamy. Great for a brunch. Let's put our asparagus tart on our platter. It's quite hot still, so I'm just going to lift it quite carefully and just pop it onto this platter. You can see how beautifully that phyllo has baked. The asparagus is a gorgeous green, and my filling has set. So my brunch is ready to go. It's actually a vegetarian meal, which is really nice for that time of day. We've got a spaghetti pizza, our baked brie, our phyllo and asparagus tart, and finishing off with delicious cinnamon buns. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. Please join me again next week when I'll be showing you some great ideas for quick bakes, including my favorite red velvet cupcakes, some easy biscotti, and some Toblerone muffins.
You've seen her do it on TV. Now learn to cook with Sharon at one of her fun interactive cooking workshops. From the very basics of cooking to full dinner party meals or cakes and bakes, Sharon Glass has a cooking class or workshop just for you. For more information or to book a spot, visit www.thehomechannel.co.za and follow the link to Food in a Flash. And for one lucky Home Channel viewer, Sharon is offering an interactive workshop for you and 7 of your friends. All you have to do to enter is log on to our website, fill in the online entry form, and you could stand a chance to win this great prize. Entries for the competition close on Sunday the 15th of July.